our guests from the Resorts and Lodges community. Again, I'm Doug Kennedy with Kennedy Training Network. This is our second in the 2016 series of webinars that we're presenting in conjunction with our Marketing Alliance partners at TRAC. Some of you were with us for webinar 1. If you're joining us, and again, we'll do a little bit of a review of that webinar in case you're joining us for the very first time. The training you're going through today is part of our Hotel Reservations Quest program, which is a reservation sales training program we created after having done many programs over the years. In 2014, we kind of started over by going back to recordings of real calls from real callers as recorded through systems such as the TRAC Pulse, where we can listen in to real calls. And from that, I identified what's different about reservations sales in the era of today. So again, we'll do a little bit of a review, and then we'll get into our topic of the day. And then we will be continuing on throughout the year, each month for the webinar. If you're on the mailing list already, you'll be able to join us for that. If you ever do miss one, we also record these for sharing, or if you have some people that could not be on the call today, if you have some people that couldn't make it, then you'll be able to pick that up from the recording of the webinar that gets distributed. So I now pose the question, why is it so important to do the basics extremely well in today's world? And again, as a bit of a recap from last time, fielding reservation inquiries today is a very different process circa 2016 than it was not so long ago. Now, if we take a journey back a few years and we think about how people used to make their reservations prior to calling us, in fact, most of them came in by phone, prior to calling, they had very little information. They would work through this old-fashioned item that you see here called a telephone book, or they would have a directory such as AAA Auto Tour Book, or perhaps Fedor's Guide to Your Destination. And if you're part of a hotel brand, of course, all the brands had their own directories as well. So when it came to information, though, they had very little information. They had our phone number, maybe a picture, and a few bullets regarding what we sell. In today's world, the balance of power has shifted to their side of the equation. So, in fact, very often they know as much, and perhaps in some cases more, than we know about the rooms, or in the case of our vacation rental clients joining us today, the vacation homes that you're selling, they can do a lot of research prior to dialing our number, okay? So you have to wonder, with all the information we have put out there, why do these callers still call us? All of the folks who went around in the early 2000s selling hotels and resorts and vacation rental companies, websites, and developing website developers, and those who had connected the websites with the central reservation systems, the CRS providers. You know, a lot of their sales pitch was, hey, guess what? If you hook up with us, if you build this website, if you have connectivity in real time, they will book online and they won't have to call you anymore. And the subtle message was, you people on the call today would not have a job, and I would no longer have a training career because no one is supposed to call circa 2016. And yet, as you know, when you pick up the phone calls, they're still calling. Despite what we put out there, a lot of people still call. So why do they still call? Well, most have been online prior to calling, and a lot are online while they're on the phone. A lot of you may get the phone call, hi, I'm on your website now. I'm looking at this room. Can you tell me what's the room like, or what's the hotel like? And I know you really want to say, like, it's like a hotel. It looks just like the picture. There's a bed and a nightstand, a lamp, and a dresser. Actually had called to book because their friend was staying in that vacation home and it posted pictures on Facebook. Now, in this case, they were happy about those pictures. But sometimes somebody might make a negative posting about your hotel or about a particular accommodation, and it leads to people being confused. So we had them confused. There's also a lot of skepticism with regards to the photos that you post on your website, that nobody believes them. They believe they're retouched. No, we would never retouch photos. That a lot of it, a one-star reviewer hates it. So we have people that are confused that decide to give us a call. We have others that are simply overwhelmed by choices they've seen at your website and elsewhere. So you have people that are surfing online. They start out at a OTA. Room types. If you're at a resort, you might have 7 or 8 room types. And if you're at a vacation rental company, you might have properties with room types. So we have people that get overwhelmed by choices. If you've not already done so, I believe I mentioned in webinar 1, you may find it interesting to go onto Google and search for Sheena Lyengar. That's Sheena, Sheena Lyengar, Lyengar, and that are not confused. They're definitely going to stay with us. Well, call. They still call either just to make sure the rate they see is in fact the lowest rate, or to verify that that rate they see is in fact the final price. A lot of people have been tricked, again, referring to online travel agencies, OTAs. When you shop at some of these, you see the price, but only one price. And then, of course, sometimes the resort fee, the hotel fee, the internet fee, the parking fee is not included. So these people call up to make sure that the price they're seeing at your website is the price, or perhaps they're calling to try to negotiate and make you an offer, okay, or to use their AAA discount, or to use their AARP discount, or to try to use both at the same time. Finally, we have the newest trend. We have people that they don't have any questions. They are not confused. They're not overwhelmed. They're ready to make a reservation, okay, except that now they're calling on their mobile device, and they click to call instead of booking on their smartphone. So we have this gentleman here driving. We know that in 2013, the mobile searches exceeded desktop searches for the first time in history, and yet we have mobile bookings are still a fraction of overall bookings. Now, if you do read marketing publications, and I highly recommend hotelmarketing.com, if you read them, you'll see in their articles about, oh, mobile bookings are up. Yeah, it was like 4%, and now it's 5%. Or you'll see 25% of all bookings come through mobile. Yeah, well, that press release or that data is published by an online travel agency, and maybe 25% of hotwire bookings come from mobile, or hotel room tonight, perhaps. But overall bookings, we have most people that book on a device, that search on a mobile device, do not book on a mobile device. Instead, they click to call, instead of trying to do the transaction on their smartphone screen. We also have people that are simply ready to make the reservation, but it's easier to call you than it is to try to book it when they're busy doing other things, such as cooking or jumping on a plane. So as a result then, as we talked about last time, we as an industry have needed to update our lodging industry reservation sales processes, methods, and tactics. Now, where we're at today, a lot of companies, sales and reservation sales has devolved into being what I call website search support. If you call up a lot of hotels, resorts, call centers, and even vacation rental companies, they find out the dates, they find out the number of people, they perhaps find out the number of bedrooms at vacation rentals. They click enter and they read a list of the rates and accommodations that come up. Yesterday in my class, I had about 5 participants in my on-site training workshop. I had them each develop this big call story, and I had them call a resort company in a different location. In this case, it was vacation rental. I do this also with resorts when I'm training a resort, and hotels when I'm training in a hotel. So the participants come up with a story behind their travel plan, then they use that story to contact another similar lodging operation. And what we very often find is this methodology right here. The people fielding the calls approach their job as if they worked in the technical support department for the website. In other words, for that person who cannot figure out how to search our website online. Okay, so, okay, well, we'll do it for you. What are your dates? How many people? How many nights? Here's the price. Yesterday, we had 5 different people called 5 different prominent vacation rental companies, and we found that every single one of them listed every accommodation that came up. I don't know that it was everyone, but they gave our participants a list of 5 to 7 options. And maybe there was more, but still 5 to 7 options is too many choices. Some of them even said, hey, what's your email? I'll email you the list. So that is not helping. And a mantra that I'll repeat again and again in every webinar, it is not our job to help them find what's available. They don't need us for that. But it is our job to help them decide, help them pick, help them commit. So that's what reservation selling is all about circa today, making that connection, and then helping them make a commitment right here, right now. And if you stay with me throughout the year, later on, we'll be getting into asking the right questions. We will look at providing descriptions that allure and entice. Rather than listing and notifying, we will look at overcoming rate objections. In fact, we're just introducing a brand new training module in April, which is all about quoting rates effectively, overcoming rate objections, managing rate fences, and also presenting rates in the most positive way. So in other words, rate, availability, restrictions, advanced purchase rates, all of that. So there's a lot going on today in voice reservations. And why is it so important that you're on this webinar today? Well, a couple of reasons. For one, smart companies see this as an opportunity. You are the companies that showed up here today, are lodging companies on this webinar, are recognized, and many of you are TrackPulse clients because you are looking to monitor what's happening on your phone to make sure we capture who we're speaking with, follow up with emails to make sure we turn them into leads, and to personalize it throughout, to personalize that experience, just as smart lodging companies are looking to do for overall for their guests. Now, in our hospitality and guest service workshops, I have always used the term for about 2 years now called hyper-personalization. It's the era where we're looking for ways to make the entire guest or customer experience personalized throughout. Now, interestingly, yesterday, I read one of my favorite publications. I guess I might be a little biased because I write for I write for all my favorite ones, but hotelmarketing.com If you're not already signed up for the daily newsletter, hotelmarketing.com, write it down at the end of the webinar. Go and sign up for it. And yesterday, they had a story about hyper-personalization is where marketing is going in today's world. So that's what we want to do to make the phone ring. But we also want to do that when the phone does ring, that we personalize the call throughout. Because these days, we need to do all we can to capture more direct bookings coming straight to your operation. Why is that? If we let that guest go back online, they very well might end up booking at one of the other websites that you see here, okay? So many of you on the call today are distributing your inventory by some, most, or all of the websites listed here. And then, of course, we have Trivago and meta search engines, Kayak, Trivago, and others that search all of these websites. And what happens is they might go back to these websites and book us through that website. And now, for many of these, we have a top-line cost, okay, that right off the top skims 10, 15, 20, 25% of the reservation fee. Now, some of these other ones have different models, of course. So if we let them go back online at these online travel agencies, they might pick someone else, okay? The other thing is, they might pick us through the other channel, and then it costs us money, okay? But the other thing, of course, is they might pick someone else off the list. So some of these are, you know, I'm not saying if they're good or bad partners. Obviously, I think it is wonderful to be on sites like resorts and lodges where it is helping you reach new customers who would not otherwise find you, to drive that traffic to you, to your phone call, to your website, to your direct booking. But we want to make sure our big challenge in these days is these online travel agencies that are taking a cut of the top line that is per transaction fee that's costing us a lot of money on commission. So one way to do that is to do the basics, but to do them extremely well. So in our remaining time now, we're going to run through what the basics are, and I will share with you some tactics for making sure that you, your colleagues, or if we have leaders here today, your associates that report to you, focus on what seems like the little things, but to understand that the little things mean a lot. Now, if anyone's been in the lodging industry for as long as I have, you might remember that at one time, Sheraton Hotels, their slogan was, at Sheraton, it's the little things that mean a lot. I thought that was wonderful. The Courtyard Marriott used something similar starting last year regarding the little things. If you pay attention to the smallest details, those small details create a big picture, all right? Now, particularly when it comes to the telephone, because the telephone is our way of, one of our only ways these days of reaching guests, all right? So in this webinar, we're going to look at telephone hospitality excellence. We'll look at listening empathetically, and then we will preview a future webinar on hospitality part of reservations, bringing out the best in others. Because the techniques we'll look at today kind of starts off the call on a positive note, so we bring out the best in others, which will bring out the best in ourselves. And by the way, if you use these tactics throughout your day, you will have more fun. You will meet nicer callers. You will go home happy. And when someone says, hey, how was your day? You're going to be like, oh, I talked to so many nice people today. It was a wonderful day. If you don't use these techniques and you process calls like you worked on the assembly line of a factory of human interactions, you're going to bring out the worst in callers, or you're going to talk to at minimum indifferent callers. Now, when it comes to first impressions, that telephone is our storefront window to the hotel, the resort, or the rental company. You are the first impression makers. In days of old, we had these things called billboards. Now, actually, there's still some billboards out there. But today, the billboard, in a lot of ways, is on the cyber highway. The billboard is the website. And if your company is smart, it makes your phone number prominent, post your phone number prominently so that when people have questions, they see that phone number and it gives them the opportunity to come inside our location. Now, I grew up in a retail business in a mom and pop retail store called the Kennedy Craft Supply Store, Kennedy Craft Shop, when I was a kid. And we were all about that storefront window. My mom, who was commonly known as Mrs. Kraft, she started this little hobby store. She knew that that storefront window was what brought in those passers-by walking down the shopping center. So we want to welcome them in today's world into that storefront window. When they dial our number, we are the first impression makers. Now, if you do a great job, you can make a connection. Okay, now we have so many different locations here. I would love to be able to say, raise your hand, but since I can't see your hand, I'm going to ask you to think about how many of you were mentioned in a guest survey. Some of you might have even been mentioned in TripAdvisor. Now, hopefully in a good way, of course. But it is a wonderful thing to think that somebody who booked their reservation at minimum a few days out, and for some of you, several weeks or a couple of months in advance, remembers you that much time later after they check in, they meet the reception staff, they meet everybody else in operations, and at the end, when they get their survey, they're still remembering you. Some of you maybe have been asked for. They say, oh, I can't wait to meet you. I talked to a young lady at my last client that started in reservations. She was now in the marketing department. She says she still has guests that call to make the reservation, and they insist on speaking with her. So they still have her set up with the login, and she will take that call and go into their system and book the reservation. That's what we want to do. Now, the telephone is particularly important because of the interplay of communications for our voice reservations channel with other distribution channels such as internet and email. Now, some short-sighted marketers, and I'm sure they're not the companies signed up for this webinar today, they actually think that voice is a dying channel and that nobody's going to call, and that the only person that calls is, 85 years old and she doesn't know how to work a computer. But in fact, you have a lot of people of all demographics that do call. I think I mentioned in the previous webinar, one of my training clients has been SLS Hotels down in South Beach, Miami. It is the hotel for the millennials. They have a very hip food and beverage culinary experience. They have the nightclub atmosphere in the lobby with the hot night spot. They have the day pool party where they actually charge you to go to the swimming pool. And then, you can even get a table for like $1,000 with one bottle of vodka. Just kidding. But it is very popular these days to have pool parties. They are the millennial hotel, and as I understand, relatively a third of their business comes from voice, because it's an important trip for those millennials. They're spending a lot of money, and it's probably somebody's 30th birthday, or it's somebody's, big moment. They're going to make a call. And they may end up that phone call by then going back and booking online. Also, a lot of you have clients, have guests who book online and then call us to make sure that it came through. That's always fun. If you're not seamless with your other channels, then your reservations come in by email or perhaps even still fax, and you haven't entered them yet, and they're calling to reconfirm it, and it's not in the system. We have other people that email us, and then we have those that email us, and 5 minutes later, when we haven't responded yet, they call us, okay, and then they book online. So we have channel surfing guests, but the one time we get to touch them is when they call us. Now, also, they're going to need us the most when online tools fail them. So in other words, when they have a special request, when they must have connecting rooms, not just as a request, but they need to confirm it because they have a very young children that they don't want to be next door, they must have the door in between. Or they have a pet, and it doesn't say that you take pets. So they want to call and plead the case for their pet. But just to let you know, I want to bring a pet, and a little bit about my pet. It is small, it is well behaved, it never barks, it has no fleas, it never sheds. Do you take pets? Or they have the elderly parent, maybe not someone in a wheelchair that needs a fully accessible room, but they have questions such as exactly how many steps from the front desk to the accommodation, or are there any stairs, or dietary needs. The first caller is vegan, the next caller needs gluten-free, the third person needs no peanuts. So people with special dietary needs, people with medical needs. A lot of you may be located next to hospitals, medical institutions where people are coming in and they need oxygen, or they need to store medicine, or they're concerned with cleanliness because they're going through treatments impacting their immunities, special transportation needs. Maybe if you're a resort, they need to find out if they can park their RV, the high vehicle with a high clearance, will it fit in the garage? So when there's something special, or like we said, at the SLS Hotel, it's your 30th birthday and you want to make sure it's the right place for you, these are the people most likely to call us, or also the person that tries to make the reservation online and it doesn't go through. Sometimes it happens. Systems fail. This is our moment to shine. This is our moment to be the first impression makers of the hotel. And this is our moment to start off that call with a positive opening greeting, okay? So the elements of a positive opening greeting is a greeting of the day, such as good morning, good evening, or thank you for calling, or some of you get cute and say, welcome to Brand X Hotel, or season's greetings. So some type of greeting, the company and or departmental name. So in other words, if you are working in a department that the calls first go to a switchboard and they say, good afternoon, thank you for calling Brand X Hotel, how may I direct your call? Oh, hello, may I have reservations? Then you will then be switched over and you want to say, good afternoon, thank you for calling reservations. Personally, I think it is always a good idea, even if they talk to someone at the switchboard, to repeat the name again and the department name. So again, in that scenario, thank you for calling Brand X Hotel. How may I direct your call? And then, good afternoon. Thank you for calling reservations at Brand X Hotel. Okay. And that reiterates the brand name so they don't forget where they called. You then want to provide your name and, of course, an offer to assist. How may I assist you? How may I help you today? All right. So a greeting of the day, company, departmental name, your name, and an offer to assist. Next up, we want to ask for and use the caller's name conversationally. Now, some of you may ask for the name in the opening greeting. So you might say, good afternoon. Thank you for calling Brand X Hotel. This is Douglas. May I have your name, please? That's fine if that's what you want to do. I'm not opposed to that. However, I think it is best if we use the greeting that I referenced here, let the caller talk, and then say, certainly I can assist you. May I ask who am I speaking with? And they will then provide the name. Reason being, this makes it a little less blunt and a little more conversational. If you do ask for the name and the opening greeting and say, good afternoon, thanks for calling Brand X Hotel. This is Doug. May I have your name, please? A lot of people will either just skip it, okay, because they don't even hear you. Or they'll say, why do you want my name? I just want to check a rate. So I think if we let them talk first, after answer with the greeting, let them talk, and then ask for their name, it makes it a little less blunt. It makes it a little more personal. Okay, we don't usually walk up to a stranger at a party and say, hey, I'm Doug Kennedy. What's your name? We say, hello, I'm Doug Kennedy. How are you? And then they say, I'm fine, thank you. My name is blah, blah, blah. Okay. And then, of course, if the person does not self-identify, you can say, oh, what is your name? Next up, I want to reiterate that it's not just saying the right things, but it's saying them in an audible way. Very often what happens is we get so busy in reservations that we forget some of these key components today. So we're going to go from the bottom up here and first talk about a nice, moderate pace so that we speak at a pace which is clear and easy to understand for people from all over the world. And also that it's not so fast that they're going to miss it, because we know they're probably multitasking. Now, a lot of people think rate of speech has to do with where you live. In other words, all you people in the Northeast are known for talking really, really fast, but those of you down in the South talk really slow. However, what I find pace has the most to do with stress. The more stressed a person is, the faster they're going to talk. Have you ever had a stressed out Southerner talking to you? Good afternoon, thank you, on Grand X Hotel. This is Doug, may I help you? So even if you're from the South and you tend to talk slow, make sure when you're stressed that we maintain a moderate pace. Also, inflection. A lot of people say that same greeting so many times that they sound like they have a mouthful of marbles. All right, and the inflection can change the entire meaning of what we're saying. Yes, we'd be happy to help you with that. Oh, you're on the vacation. Wonderful. Anyone here can help you, but feel free to ask for me. So we want to make sure that we use the right inflection. We also do not want to be the monologue person that talks without any inflection at all, that is just really boring like this. So a little bit of inflection to change the pitch. And usually we want to end on an up note rather than a down note. We do not want to be Eeyore the donkey on the phone. Good afternoon. Thanks for calling my hotel. This is Eeyore. How can I help you? So positive inflection, moderate pace, and last, energy, enthusiasm, because we are all so happy to work today, yes? Nobody ever has a bad day in the hospitality industry. Pets never escape on the way out the door when we're leaving for work. Kids don't get cranky, and there's no traffic in your town. Well, all those things may happen to us, but when we walk in the door of our company and put on that headset, we put on happy. It's almost like being an actor, and we step into character. So the enthusiasm, and the more you project this, the more you get it back. Case in point. Have you ever had a bad day? The dog did escape, and it is an indoor dog. The kids were cranky, and there was traffic, and it rained. Okay, and we come into work, and we are just having one of those days. The very first call you get will be the most difficult call, and then one after the other. It's almost like, and then it spreads to your coworkers. It's almost like someone put up a sign, today will be one of those days. And then everybody reacts with the same negativity. So energy and enthusiasm is contagious. Next up, putting them on hold. All right, so we want to be really good. It will happen that we have to place calls on hold. A few of you may work in a front desk situation where you're checking people in and taking reservations calls. Some of you may work in a small department where you have to pick up the call and then place it on hold manually. And I don't know if any of you in those situations have ever noticed an international phenomena, which seems to be the case worldwide, whether I'm training in Moscow, Russia, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Bulgaria, or throughout the U.S. and Canada. It is called the everything happens at once principle. In other words, at our weakest moment, everything happens at once. So if you're working the front desk, there's two people on, nobody has checked in for a half an hour, so your colleague says, you know what, I'm going to go get us a couple of sodas. As soon as they step away, the 5 remaining check-ins for the night, 4 of them arrive at once. And then 2 phone lines light up. So there will be a time when you have to put them on hold. Nothing wrong, by the way, with saying, you know what, you've reached the hotel directly. I'd be happy to help you with that. Do you mind if I place you on hold momentarily? I am assisting another guest. Okay? So let them know that they've reached you directly, and then explain why it's necessary. Or, this one's for the new people out there. When you're new and you get a question, you know what? Just say, That is a really good question. Let me find out. Nothing wrong with saying, I will find out and I will let you know. Okay. Also, during more lengthy holds, check back with them. Can you continue holding? I'm checking on that for you. Give me a few more moments. And by the way, if it's going to be a really lengthy hold, there is nothing wrong with asking and offering to call them back. A lot of people in circa 2016, what I hear on real calls, if you offer the call back, they say, you know what, that's okay, I'll just hold. And they put their phone on speaker and they continue to do whatever it is they're doing because, you know, the days of paying a lot of money for long distance are for most of us pretty much over. Then when you pick a call back up, we want to thank them for holding and apologize for having kept them waiting. Now, if you do have to transfer the calls as well, sometimes we are not able to assist them. It's ideal if we can. So I do encourage you to try to take ownership so we avoid transferring the call in the first place, and instead put them on hold, find out, and resolve it yourself. But if you do have to transfer, that's fine. Make sure to tell the person on the line, tell them both. Tell the person you're transferring the call to why you're doing so, and who you're and tell the person on the line who you're transferring it to. All right. So in other words, all right, I'm going to transfer you over to Bob in accounting, and he'll be able to assist you with that question about your previous stay. And then you get on the phone and say, hello, Bob in accounting. It's Doug from the reservations. I have Mr. Kennedy on the line. He's got a question about his previous bill. And in that sense, we supervise the transfer. And then hopefully, they're going to do their job, and they're going to say, hello, Mr. Kennedy. This is Bob in accounting. I understand you had a question about your bill from your stay with us previously. All right. And that makes them feel like they've been handed off professionally. It's a great way to make a positive impression at the storefront window to your hotel. Next up, we want to avoid call screening. All right. Now, you know, it seems like telemarketing is not as big as it used to be. Especially in our personal lives, we don't get that much telemarketing because most of us don't have landlines anymore. And even though some people might get our cell phone numbers, you know, a lot of people, they don't even answer that cell phone unless they know who it is. If you don't recognize it, you let it go to voicemail. And when they don't leave a voicemail, you'll probably have a telemarketer. However, in the business world, we still have business to business, or B2B as they say, telemarketing going on. So when someone calls for someone else, or sometimes they'll call back and ask for their reservation, to say, hi there, I want to talk to Jane. Is Jane there today? Instead of saying, who's calling? Okay, when we say, who's calling, it's almost like, well, is Jane there today? Who's calling? We're like saying, well, you know, Jane might be here and she might not be here. It depends on who you are and how important you are. So instead of saying, who's calling, you know what, let's just say, yes, she's available. Or yes, he's in. May I tell him who's calling? And in that way, we can do what we call announce instead of call screening. And then you can then pick up the phone and say, Jane, we have Sally on the line, and she has been asking for you for reservations. All right, so that's call announce, and that is a great way to introduce the parties. Call screening is when we say, who's calling? Might be here, might not, depends on you. So now, managers, I hope you buy into this because, you know, heaven forbid, you might occasionally get the telemarketer just politely say, you know what, thank you for calling, but we already bought, or we don't need, or we wish you well, but we're not a prospect. How long does that take? And in the meantime, I will remind you that sometimes today's vendors calling to sell you something might be tomorrow's potential customers. The person calling to sell you cleaning supplies, if you're a front office or an operations manager, you know what? That person, he or she might have a daughter that's getting married. They might have relatives from out of town that need a place to stay, or their company might someday need a meeting. And people do remember how they're treated. So the telephone is your storefront window to your guests, but also to the entire outside world. Finally, with regards to telephone hospitality, and then we're going to talk about listening, we want to make sure to end the call correctly. We talked about the positive opening greeting being a great first impression. Ending the call correctly gives us a great last impression. So we want to first offer additional assistance. We want to say, is there anything else I can assist you with today? And then we want to pause for them to respond. If else in today's world, set yourself apart. Is there anything else I can assist, Mr. Kennedy? You have a desk. I'm sure when a guest shows up at your hotel and they actually have a confirmation from somebody else's hotel. So thank them for calling the hotel from a practical reason, but also it reinforces the branding. We want them to connect this wonderful phone conversation they just had with the organization they just had that conversation with. All right. So all these things then will be great bookend to the call. Finally, let the caller hang up first. Wait that extra 1 or 2 seconds before you hear their click, and so that we don't rush out and say, okay, well, here's confirmation number 1, 2, 3, 4. Anything else I can help you with? No, thanks a lot for calling. Click. And right as your finger is moving towards the release key, and it's too late to turn back, and you're just about to press it, and they say, wait, too late. Should have asked me while you had me. Now that person has to redial the number, go back into queue, wait on hold, and get back to possibly a different person, okay? So to be good is one thing. To be great, truly offer additional assistance, thank them for calling the brand and the hotel, and then wait to hear the click on their end first. Wait that extra second or 2 before we disconnect. All right. So doing the basics extremely well is to use the telephone hospitality correctly and to recognize that it's the storefront window to the outside world. Now we're going to finish up today's webinar by looking at listening empathetically. What does it mean to listen empathetically? Well, first of all, let's take listening, because listening is a subject that frequently gets confused with hearing. Is there a difference between hearing and listening? Let me put it this way. Is anyone on the webinar today married? Do you ever have the discussion at home regarding listening? Does the subject of listening come up with your significant other, domestic partner, boyfriends, girlfriends, or romantic partners or spouses? Well, maybe there's a reason, because we as a society are really good at it. So we want to make sure we listen to not only get the facts, and we do need to get the day and the date and the number of people and all those details, but we also want to listen empathetically. Now, you probably heard the concept of empathy. Empathy is different than sympathy. Sympathy is where we feel sorry for someone, okay? Now, I'm certainly not going to advocate having sympathy for your callers, although you might, but please do not express it and say, sir, I feel sorry for you. Sir, you are actually pitiful. Not a good thing. However, empathy is a wonderful thing. It is a sign of what social scientists today call emotional intelligence. One of the key characteristics of being emotionally intelligent is that you have a high degree of empathy for and understanding of others. And that means to remain focused and present in that conversation. Have you ever talked to somebody in your personal life that you could tell could care less? They were not focused and present. They were simply going through the motions. This is the person that comes up to you on Monday and says, hey, how are you? How's your weekend? Good, that's good. Doesn't matter what you say, you get good, that's good. How was your weekend, Doug? Oh, it was good, but you know, my house burned down. Good. How's your pet? Good, but he went to the vet and I spent $1,000. Oh, good. Okay. How's your wife? Oh, I got divorced. Oh, good. They don't even listen. So we want to remain focused and present during that conversation, all right? And don't ask for information already provided. There is nothing wrong in reservations with saying, I'm sorry, can you repeat that again? What were those dates again? And that was 2 people, correct? But if the person calls up and says, hi, I'm Doug Kennedy. It's my first time in your city. I'm coming there with my wife for our honeymoon. We don't want to say, okay, hold on just a minute. Let me get to my computer. Okay. Have you stayed with us before? Okay. How many people? How many beds? I'd like 2 rooms for my honeymoon. That doesn't make sense. Have you stayed with us before? I just told you I hadn't. So nothing wrong with saying, okay, now that was 2 people, correct? And it's your honeymoon, so I assume 1 room and 1 bed. Nothing wrong with that. We also want to, but just don't miss key details. We also want to react with sincerity, okay? And that means exchanging verbal nods. So in today's webinar, we now get to the most important part. I need everyone to listen and to follow along closely. I am going to teach you how to be sincere. Have you ever had the caller that mentioned a really big deal? It's their 10th anniversary, or even better, 20th or 30th or 40th, or it's their birthday. You know, a person has only one 10th anniversary, ideally. At least that's the way it's supposed to be. Doesn't always work out that way, but when it's somebody has 1 honeymoon, 1 day, that's for sure. We want to react with sincerity. It is a big deal to them. Okay, if you're at a resort and this time of year with May coming up, you're getting a lot of honeymooners. Hey, we're planning a trip. It's our honeymoon. When is it? How many nights? How many people? How many beds? Don't think you're special. I got 17 other honeymooners so far this week, and it's only Thursday. So we want to be sincere. So please listen up. I will teach everyone on the call how to be sincere. When someone says, it's a honeymoon, or it's our first trip with the baby, there's 2 things we can do. We can go, ah, or ah. Okay, try that together, everyone. I'm listening in. Ah, ah. Now, isn't that wonderful? Didn't you learn a lot from Doug Kennedy today in this webinar? Well, be sincere with exchanging those verbal nods. That's where we, now in person, how many of you talk with your hands? In fact, I'm wearing a headset right now. I'm looking at my own hands. I'm talking with my hands. But you can't see them, but it helps us express. Now, on the phone, at least for now, we don't have video phones. Not a bad idea, but we don't have them. So we have those vocalizations. Ah, 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 uh-huh. Now, we don't want to go, uh-huh. I'm not saying that. We want to do it. Certainly, absolutely, most definitely, we don't want to go, uh-huh. But we certainly want to use verbal nods like, oh, I see, okay, all right. And then also, when somebody tells you a really big deal, if you restate it back to them, they're gonna know you're listening. Has that subject ever come up when you learned listening in relationships? Restating back and commenting on what they just told you, all right? So say, oh, so your 10th anniversary, that's exciting, or oh, your first time, or oh, your 3rd time in a row every summer. Also, expressions of empathy and when somebody is going through a tough time. A lot of times they tell us sad stories. What brings you to town? We're expecting a wedding, an anniversary, and they say, what brings you to town? Actually, it's a funeral. Or, well, I'm getting surgery. Or my husband is getting some treatments. Or well, we're coming back on vacation this year. We come there every year, but I'm doing the planning this year because we lost a grandparent, and he or she, they usually plan. So, I'm old enough to have experienced loss in my life. I'm sure most of you have as well. The empathy of a stranger can mean a lot. So if you just pause for a moment and say, well, I apologize. I am sorry to hear about your loss, but we hope you have many happy memories. So expressions of empathy, I understand how you feel when it's a somber occasion. Other listening techniques, avoiding talkovers, all right? So we talked about speaking at a nice, moderate pace so that they can understand us. Sometimes we do get people that speak excessively slow talkers. Hi there. And then some people have awkward pauses. I'm thinking about coming out on the 17th. And, if we're not careful, we get impatient, we talk over them. I'm thinking about coming out that when on the 17th of June through. So let them finish their sentence and be patient with our slower talkers. On the other hand, the very next call, if you get done talking to Billy Bob, you get the person from Boston, and they're talking really fast. And, hey, good afternoon, how are you today? Well, listen, I'm thinking about coming down there, and here's my date, and here's the number of people, and I love coming there. In that case, you got to take the written notes of the key details. So some of you type really fast, and you might have a little text box open that you can type this in. But, for most of us, keep the old-fashioned word processor, the notepad and pen handy. So these are all listening techniques. You may have read them if you're in a relationship and you read an article in your magazine regarding the listening techniques in relationships. They may sound familiar. If you took a communications class in high school or college, they sound familiar. In a reservations call, they're absolutely critical. These are the basics, doing them extremely well. Finally, to finish up on listening, remember that callers are real people who need our help. They are not just a squeaky voice coming in through our earpiece. So try to imagine the conversation from their perspective. Okay, try to engage people. If we come into work all day and we think about our dog and we think about our kids and we think about our spouse and we think about how many errands we have to do after work, we think about ourselves all day long. Okay, the clock drags, the time drags by, the clock hardly moves. If we come to work every day thinking about them and the people that we're speaking to, who are, if you're a business hotel that are planning that important business trip, most of you are primarily leisure, the person is probably calling to plan the most important event on their calendar year, circa 2016. And right now, here at the end of March, they're planning their summer vacation. Try to imagine it from their perspective. Show a little interest. It's our first time traveling with the baby. Oh, really? Yes. And now you're talking to mom here. Or, what brings you to town? My sister, she's having a baby. Oh. And now you find out, behind the masks we wear as strangers, there's a true human being in all of us. And the more we can rehumanize our guests, rehumanize our calls, the better we're going to be at making connections to outselling the competition, but also to having more fun. So to finish up our last two slides, I want to give a little preview of the webinar coming up. I believe it's scheduled for May, which will address kind of the hospitality part of what we do. It's either May or June, I can't recall offhand, but we're going to, the next one we're going to be looking at asking the right questions for an investigative selling approach. But we will be continuing on throughout this webinar series to look at hospitality is a great way to bring out the best in others, but it also brings out the best in ourselves. Because hospitality is more than a series of communication techniques. Now, we have covered communication techniques today of telephone hospitality, and we've looked at listening with empathy. But think about on the last slide, when we unmask the caller, and we find out there's a human story being played out on the other end of that phone line, we learned the true definition of hospitality. And ladies and gentlemen, that means caring about as well as caring for others. When we care for others, we find out the dates, we find out the number of people, we find out the number of beds, we click enter, we give them a price. Okay? When we care about them, we understand we are not room renters. We are in the vacation experience, or at least the travel experience business. All right? And if you're a business hotel, you know that business trips are pretty important too. So hospitality is caring, not only caring for them, but caring about the people we call guests every single day. So I thank you again for joining us in our webinar series. I hope to have brought value to you, to your company, for investing time for you to be with us, to our wonderful alliance partners at Track with the Track Pulse clients, and also Resorts and Lodges, the parent company. We look forward to hosting you again on next month's webinar with more details to come out from my colleague, Nick Regis. And Nick, thank you again for the opportunity to present today.
All right, thank you everyone for attending there. And like Doug said, we will have the email with the next and third in the series of webinars going out later next week. So everyone have a good afternoon and enjoy the rest of your day and weekend. Thanks.